there's this piece of software I recently stumbled upon, and that's called SUC, which stands for Simple Unix Chat, and it's a Slack clone in 5 lines of Bash. And of course, I mean, the first sentence says it. The title oversells the content a bit. Obviously, it does. But yeah, in this video, I kind of want to talk about like the Simple Unix Chat, and I don't want to show you how to set it up or something like that. If you're interested, you can find that out by yourself. But rather, I want to talk about a little bit of the idea behind this software and how it compares to Slack, and why like big bloated software is a thing and stuff like that. All right. So, but first of all, I want to say you should definitely read the original article. I think because SUC really is a like very elegant piece of software. Well, it starts here by like looking at the line count of MetaMost, which is a Slack alternative, I think, and which is like 500,000 lines of Go. I mean, like 500,000 lines of Go. I mean, yeah, sure. And then like it introduces SUC, which is basically just let me zoom in, which is basically just a while loop which reads from standard in and prints to a file. That's all it is. Yeah, infinite loop reads from standard in, prefixes it with like date and username, and appends it to a file. And all the rest that SUC does, or that something like Slack does, for example, authentication, access control, encryption, rich text, etc., is handled by like other quote-unquote Unix tools. Like, for example, SSH is used for authentication and encryption. Access control is managed by like the default normal user list and access control for like files. And rich text is handled by like some other small utilities. I think one of them is GUM or something like that, or some Python utility. And it goes into all the details in this article. I mean, yeah, so definitely read this if you're interested. Yeah, SSH for authentication, Unix file and process ownership, and permission model for access control. And you kind of like can forego all the like super complex stuff that something like Slack or MetaMost uses. And yeah, and of course it's not only 5 lines of Bash, but like it's a bit more complicated than that. But like the 5 lines title kind of encapsulates the principle. So here this usuc script is a bit more complex, which adds like rich text and stuff like that. Here pygmatize, however you pronounce that, is used for like printing like bold text or italic and stuff like that. Or here you can also use GUM. And I mean, the great thing obviously is that because all of this is just like standard, like reading from standard in, like printing to a file, you can of course automate like super easily with that. So you have like these integrations that stuff like MetaMost and Slack, etc. offer, but these are just like super complex, really. I mean, maybe not for the end user, but how they are built, it's like super complex. And you can, with something like SUC, you can build like a CI DevOps thing with like this one line, because you just you make your test, you output the output to like test log, and if that fails, you print these test log contents to your DevOps SUC channel. Like, yeah. And you can also do like git hook stuff and stuff like that. So it's like super easy. Everything is super easy because it's just like standard in and files and stuff like that, and bots also and stuff like that. So yeah, and I read a bit about SUC because there's a Hacker News post about it, and there's also like a Hacker Day post, and I read some of the comments, and yeah, they got me thinking, because obviously this is not all the like functionality of something like Slack or Discord or MetaMost and stuff like that. Obviously not, because these things have like a lot more functionality. But when it comes to like the core functionality of actually like relaying messages, of course SUC does that pretty good. and it does it in a fashion that like enables you as a user to like kind of hack your own stuff together for your own use case. For example, here it also talks about like reading from a channel and then how you can like use notify send to send you notifications on certain like, for example, keywords and stuff like that. And I mean, like something like that is impossible to do with like modern, or not impossible, but you can't really do that with like modern chat systems because they have like predefined templates, for example, and they have to have this kind of, and you don't have the flexibility and the freedom to like just use something like grep on the messages and just grep out your stuff. Like, for example, you want to only be notified when like one certain like keyword is mentioned, and you can't do that with like Slack. Like, how are you gonna do that? Like, either you have notifications on or you have them off, or maybe you have like them on for some channels, and all this functionality is like built into the software itself, but you have like no interface to like really interact with it. And I mean, for like I know this exists for like something like Signal or Telegram. There is like third-party software which gives you like a CLI interface, so it allows you to interact in a shell scriptable manner with like these messaging services, and then you can do something like this. But that's again really hacked together, and that's like, in my experience, the stuff doesn't really work all that well. And with something like Slack, the software itself is built in such a way that something like this works. Like, it just works because it's just files. Yeah, so there's no intermediary step. So yeah, leaping it to this. So, and in the comments there are like, as always, like different people, and one of the kind of people that really kind of that I find a bit frustrating is for example, I think this is something so something like this comment here. So it says here, if the core features of something are easily and trivially reproduced, maybe that's not the core source of its value. And I mean, of course not. I mean, I don't think we need to talk about that. That something like Slack provides more than just relaying text messages, like obviously. So he talks about UI development and stuff like that. And of course, the value is that Slack is like super easy to use, and everyone can use it. Like, there's no one who can't use Slack, because it's just you input your password and your username and off you go. So yeah, that also is like the value proposition. I hate terms like that, to be honest. That it's visually appealing and highly intuitive, blah blah, all this stuff. And yeah. And of course, this is correct. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say that that's not the way things are. And also, like, I don't think I can find that right now. But it also talks about, like, if you are like a business and want to like provide a service for something like this, you kind of have to do all this stuff yourself. If you're trying to hack something together, like Slack, and then sell it as something like Slack, and like a customer comes to you and says, well, can you change this and that, and you just kind of have to shrug your shoulders because you're using like SSH for authentication and stuff like that. I mean, you can't really do that. So you have to do all this stuff yourself if you want to sell it, and if you want to provide a service. So that's another key point. But only because you like kind of. But what I want to say is, I don't think that like that's like a contra argument to something like Slack. I think it's rather, it's kind of let me think what I want to say. So yeah, I wanted to say these comments are also very interesting in part. Oh yeah, there's also, for example, II, which is a suckless tool, which is something similar for IRC. This is also I have used this. This is also super interesting. So check that out. And yeah, and I think this one comment on Hackaday really, like, this guy kind of gets it, because on the one hand, I mean, this undeniably is elegant and beautiful and borderline genius, he says. And on the other, well, it's about like line count. Yeah, like for example, one issue is scaling. Because something like suck doesn't really scale in like a global sense. So you couldn't have like, I don't know, 10 million people using suck on like one server. I mean, that wouldn't work, obviously, because there are limits to like computing resources and how much like handles you can like open handles you can have on a file and stuff like that. So this really has its limitations. But then again, that is like something like suck. I mean, obviously, it's not meant to be like a global, like a like literal technical replacement to something like Slack. And I think down here he even says this. I even had this. Yeah. His main point was that this is an apples to oranges comparison and not an apples to apples comparison. I think that really hits like the point. Yeah, let me think. I made a little Cent presentation to like just remind me of some stuff I wanted to talk about. Okay, so Unix philosophy. I mean, this is really clear. I mean, Suck uses like different Unix utilities for different stuff instead of just doing everything itself in like 500,000 lines of Go, like something like Mattermost does. But there are, of course, problems scaling, user friendliness, and also like more features. Like for example, how would you implement like screen sharing in like something like Suck? Like you can't. You can maybe integrate it with something like maybe Jitsi or something, but in like the application itself, you can't. Like there's no Unix utility for screen sharing. So yeah, abstraction is really the key point here, because what something like Slack and Discord and all these services do is abstract all the like technicality away from the problem. So you're not worried about, okay, how do I now maybe share a file or share my screen or stuff like that. And also you're not worried about like scaling issues. It's just all gets abstracted away and everything just works. And I think that's also like one of the top comments here is someone wrote blah blah blah. I want stuff that just works. Yeah, so that's of course a main thing. And also kind of abstracting the limitations of like a terminal application away. Of course, I mean all of this has to do with abstraction in the end, so you don't need to worry about like anything concretely. And I think one of the main questions here is should we like adapting man to the machine or machine to man? So is abstraction in the sense that you don't have to worry about the technicalities of what you're trying to do? Is that a good thing? So are you adapting the machine to man in the sense that the software you're using gets adapted to like the user, or is the other way around more, I don't know, is that better in the end, so that the user adapts to the machine and understands how it works and all this stuff? Because there is, of course, cost to that adaptation, and the cost when you adapt the machine, quote unquote, to man is, of course, something like the cost of something like Slack. And that is like, you have like a giant application which needs a giant like company behind it, or some other form of organization, and it's all very big. Like you have like very big organization dependent technology, and with that come like certain limitations. For example, centralization, complexity, etc. So of course, yeah, complexity is very obvious. Centralization is also obvious because that goes hand in hand. Because the more complex your application is, or the more complex your technology and technique in general is, the more you need to centralize, because you need more resources. So this is also very obvious, and this is not only for software, of course, but just like in general. I mean, look at something like the internet, like the internet in like a technical way. I mean, of course, the internet has to be centralized. You need like centralized companies which provide like internet connection, because all this stuff is so complex that you can't have different standards. You need like one standard. Everything needs to be standardized, and that entails centralization. And it's the same with like computing in general. or computers in general, rather. And when it then comes to software, this is also the same. So something like Slack only works as well as it does because it's like a centralized service. So everything can just work because it's made out of like one piece of wood, you could say. But that really leads you to the conclusion that there's no freedom, really. Because if you have like super complex software and like big centralization and all this stuff, all that comes with that, you really, as the end user, you have no real freedom to do what you want. So you can't grab like your chat history. You can't really do that, except you like try to hack it together with some CLI stuff and stuff like that. Yeah. So let me think about what I want to say about freedom. Yeah. So simplicity really gives you as the user like freedom, and I talked about this in the video about minimalism and maximalism, or minimalist and maximalist software. That if you like if you want to build something, and if you want to and building is like automating and stuff like that, you really want to have like bricks, like simple bricks, like bricks which you can like glue together. And if you have like super complicated, well, not bricks, but like whole like pieces and components which are like super specialized, you can't really like put them together the way you want if you think about this like abstractly. So you want to have like simple bricks, and that is really what SUC is about, I think. So I mean, it uses files, like simple files. It uses stuff like SSH. I mean, and SSH is not like simple in like a technical sense. SSH is super complex, of course. It does a lot of stuff and stuff like that, but in the end, it provides a simple interface, and something that you can easily glue stuff onto. So yeah, and it also uses like for rich text, it also uses utilities that are super straightforward. Like they get input, they provide output, that's it. And the rest is just shell script. So yeah, that's pretty simple. So yeah, and I think I talked about a lot of the stuff already in the minimalist and maximalist video. So watch that if you're interested in this kind of stuff. But in the end, I think one of the main points here is about means and ends. Because if you look at something like Slack, I mean, you see a lot of functionality like, oh, we can screen share, oh, we can do calls, oh, we can like share emojis and stickers and whatnot, and have like we can have like 1 trillion channels, and there's no limitation on what we can do, like blah blah, and there's so many people and stuff like that. But really, I mean, in the end, you have to think, okay, what does this matter? Like, why does this matter? Why is this important? And this is, I think, where this trend of our time, that means become the ends, really kind of shines through. Because I mean, again, you can say like, oh, Slack or Discord or whatever has like so much functionality and can do so much more stuff and all this, but when it comes down to like the core functionality of, okay, I want to relay messages, it's not really about, okay, now I can like relay messages to like X channels, and like I have like 1 trillion stickers and stuff like that, and I can do all this fancy stuff. But it's really about, okay, who am I communicating with, and what do I want to communicate? And both like this stuff, like this core, I don't even want to call it functionality, but that's the point of like a messaging system. I want to communicate stuff to someone, and I want to have like, I need to have something that I want to communicate. And I think this is really where, if you think like practically, most of the stuff that's written on Slack or messaging platforms like that is really like noise. Like you communicate, and especially in like a work environment, you communicate with people you have like no real connection with, and you communicate about stuff that really, in the end, well, it doesn't matter to you personally, only to the degree that you need it for work, and that you need to do work to get paid to like pay the stuff you need to pay to exist in society. And I think there's like a trend, because like the ends are so, yeah, there's not really an end to that, to messaging on Slack, in work, in general. The end is so far removed that one tends to like try to perfect the means. And so the means become the ends, I think. And I think this is like a general tendency of our time and of like technical society as a whole. Yeah. Yeah, that was the last slide. I hope that's kind of understandable. And I don't think this is kind of stuff one can really understand like without thinking and like observing like the reality one lives in and our technical society, and like also reading stuff about that, because I think like from a like normie, well, I don't want to say like normie, yeah, well, maybe from like a normal, let's just say normal point of view, all this is kind of obvious. And I mean, if you look at the Hacker News and Hacker Day, most of these comments are like also like, well, you need something like Slack because it needs to be user friendly so every idiot can use it. And yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, but that's not a good thing, is what I want to say. Because again, you have like all this stuff with like complexity and like being like really kind of needing big companies and stuff, like big organizations. But also, like, it should rather be that you want to train people to be more, well, in like a work environment, you would want to train people to be like more competent and more technically, like knowing knowing the stuff they are working with and they are using, rather than like dumbing everything down so every idiot can use it. Because again, with this dumbing down, which is abstraction, there comes like a lot of ugly stuff, like 500,000 lines of Go for like a chat server. So yeah, I think that's a lot of the points I wanted to talk about. I hope this wasn't too confusing, and I hope you kind of catch my drift. I think Slack is really awesome, like a really awesome idea and awesome like example of how simple and to the point software can be and should be. And so yeah, again, I recommend reading this. I will provide a link to this article on my website in the videos section. And up here it links to the Hacker News thread and the Hacker Day thread or the Hacker Day post I just found by like searching suck simple Unix chat. And like up here there's also a link to this article, or this, well, small text. I also recommend you read this. This is also pretty interesting. Or, well, maybe food for thought. So yeah, I think that's it. I think this video is long enough already. If you made it this far, well, thanks for listening. I hope this was maybe interesting. And yeah, let me know what you think, of course. And yeah, that's it. Have a nice day.